Inside Out, the hidden map of divine consciousness. Welcome, fellow seekers of deeper wisdom. Today, we're exploring how Pixar's Inside Out contains a profound spiritual blueprint of consciousness that mirrors ancient wisdom traditions from around the world. Beyond entertainment, Inside Out as sacred text. While most viewers see Inside Out as a clever story about emotions, beneath its colorful animation lies a sophisticated spiritual framework that has been taught by mystics, sages, and philosophers for millennia. This isn't coincidence. It's evidence that the film's creators tapped into universal truths about human consciousness. Riley, the divine self beyond emotions. At the center of this spiritual map is Riley herself. Far from being just a character, Riley represents what theologians call the Great I Am, the pure consciousness that witnesses and contains all emotions, but is not limited by any of them. In Hindu philosophy, Riley embodies the concept of Atman, the eternal self that observes the mind's activities while remaining untouched by them. As the Upanishads teach, the self, though fixed in the body, is not attached to the body. It is formless and all-pervading. Riley is also what Jung called the self with a capital S, the totality of consciousness beyond the limited ego. Her journey mirrors our own process of individuation, integrating all aspects of our psyche to achieve wholeness. When Riley struggles after moving to San Francisco, we're witnessing what spiritual traditions call the dark night of the soul, a necessary period of disorientation before deeper integration can occur. As Jesus taught in John 12:24, "Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone, but if it dies, it bears much fruit." Joy, the prophetic vision of possibility. Joy isn't merely happiness. She's the inner prophet within all of us, radiating what Plato called the form of the good. Her optimism isn't naive. It's clairvoyant, seeing the divine potential in every situation. Notice how joy constantly creates possibilities where others see only problems. This mirrors what Nietzsche called the Übermensch, the overman, who affirms life's potential rather than dwelling in negativity. Her leadership in Headquarters reflects the spiritual principle that our highest consciousness should guide our decisions. Joy's journey to accept sadness parallels the spiritual maturation described in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna teaches Arjuna to embrace the fullness of experience. The wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead. Joy must learn that true wisdom includes embracing all aspects of experience, both pleasant and unpleasant. Sadness, the bodhisattva of compassion. Sadness embodies what Buddhism calls the bodhisattva ideal, the enlightened being who chooses to suffer alongside others out of compassion. Her willingness to sit with Riley's pain rather than rushing to fix it reflects the highest spiritual wisdom. When sadness touches the memory orbs, transforming them from golden to blue, she's performing what Christian mystics would call the sacred work of grief, acknowledging loss as part of the divine plan. As Ecclesiastes 3:4 reminds us, there is a time to weep and a time to laugh. The film's profound insight that sadness ultimately saves Riley challenges our culture's spiritual bypassing, the tendency to use spirituality to avoid necessary suffering. As Carl Jung observed, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Anger, sacred fire of justice. Anger is not merely rage. He embodies what prophetic traditions call righteous indignation. His fundamental concern is justice and fairness, echoing the prophet Amos's call to let justice roll down like waters. In Hindu tradition, anger represents the kshatriya energy, the warrior aspect of consciousness that protects boundaries and fights for what's right. His fire symbolizes the kundalini energy at the base of the spine, which when properly channeled, becomes a force for transformation. Notice how anger's outbursts are always triggered by violations of Riley's sense of justice. This reflects the spiritual truth that anger, when integrated wisely, serves the divine purpose of establishing right relationship. As Ephesians 4:26 advises, "Be angry, but do not sin." Fear, the guardian of the threshold. Fear serves as what Joseph Campbell called the guardian of the threshold, the sentinel protecting Riley from genuine danger. His hypervigilance represents the spiritual gift of discernment, the ability to distinguish between true and false paths. In Jungian terms, fear embodies the shadow, those aspects of ourselves we're reluctant to acknowledge. His constant scenarios of what could go wrong invite Riley to develop courage, which, as Aristotle taught, is not the absence of fear, but action in the presence of fear. Fear's protective nature reflects the spiritual principle of wise caution found in Proverbs 22:3. The prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. His gift is not paralyzing anxiety, but life-preserving awareness. Disgust, the keeper of integrity. Disgust maintains what Kant called the categorical imperative, the inner moral law that guides right action. Her discernment about what Riley consumes, physically, mentally, and socially, reflects the spiritual principle of purity. In Buddhist terms, disgust represents right action and right livelihood, the wisdom to choose what nourishes rather than poisons the soul. Her aesthetic sensibilities mirror the Confucian emphasis on propriety and refinement as spiritual virtues. Notice how disgust protects Riley not just from literal broccoli, but from toxic social situations and false values. This embodies the spiritual teaching from Philippians 4:8 to focus on whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure. Bing Bong, the divine child and sacrifice. Bing Bong represents what Jung called the puer aeternus, the eternal divine child within each of us. His playfulness and imagination embody the Taoist concept of wu wei, spontaneous, effortless action arising from our true nature. His sacrifice in the memory dump delivers one of the film's most profound spiritual lessons. By letting go of himself so joy can return to headquarters, Bing Bong enacts the central paradox taught by Jesus. Whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Matthew 16:25. The scene where Bing Bong fades away while singing, "Take her to the moon for me," represents the Buddhist principle of anatta, or non-self, the understanding that our attachments to identity must ultimately be released for the greater good. Anxiety, existential awareness. Though less prominent in the first film, anxiety, who plays a larger role in Inside Out 2, represents what Kierkegaard called the dizziness of freedom, the awareness that our choices have profound consequences. Anxiety's presence reflects the existential truth that consciousness brings responsibility. This mirrors spiritual teachings about the awakened state. It's not always comfortable, but it's necessary for authentic growth. As the Apostle Paul noted in Romans 8:22, the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. Anxiety reminds us that spiritual growth often involves discomfort as we expand beyond our comfort zones. The control console, integration of consciousness. The film's control console in headquarters brilliantly symbolizes what contemplative traditions call the integrated self. When only joy is allowed to touch the console, Riley becomes one-dimensional. True wisdom comes when all emotions have appropriate access. The console's evolution throughout the film, from simple to complex, mirrors our own spiritual development. As we mature, we develop greater capacity to hold complexity and paradox. This reflects the spiritual principle described in 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. Core memories, samskaras, and divine imprints. The glowing core memories in Riley's headquarters represent what Hindu tradition calls samskaras, deep impressions that shape our consciousness and destiny. These aren't just memories, they're formative spiritual experiences that create our personality islands. The film's insight that core memories can contain multiple emotions reflects the spiritual understanding that our deepest wisdom often comes through complex, sometimes difficult experiences. As Romans 8:28 promises, all things work together for good for those who love God. When Riley's personality islands crumble, we're watching the spiritual process that mystics call the stripping away, the necessary dissolution of identity before a more authentic self can emerge. This mirrors the mystical concept of kenosis, the emptying of the self to make room for the divine. The memory dump, the void and divine darkness. The memory dump represents what mystics call the cloud of unknowing, or the divine darkness, the apparent void where our most profound transformations occur. When joy and Bing Bong fall into this abyss, they enact the spiritual principle that transformation requires descent. This parallels Jesus' descent into hell before resurrection, the shamanic journey into the underworld, and the Buddhist concept of sunyata, or emptiness. As Meister Eckhart taught, God is not found in the soul by adding anything, but by subtracting. The fading of memories in the dump reflects the spiritual understanding of impermanence, or what Buddhists call anicca, the truth that all phenomena are transient. This teaches the profound spiritual lesson that attachment to what is passing away causes suffering. Practical spiritual wisdom for our lives. Inside Out offers profound practical wisdom for our spiritual journeys. Honor all your emotions as messengers. Each emotion has divine wisdom to offer. Integrate rather than suppress. True spiritual growth comes through embracing all aspects of consciousness. Recognize the witness beyond the emotions. You are not your feelings. You are the awareness that contains them. Allow core memories to be touched by new understanding. Spiritual growth often involves reinterpreting our formative experiences. Be willing to let outdated parts of yourself fade away. Spiritual evolution requires releasing what no longer serves. Trust the process of dissolution. What appears to be breakdown is often breakthrough in disguise. Recognize the divine purpose in emotional discomfort. Our challenges often contain our greatest gifts. Your own inner headquarters. As we conclude this exploration of Inside Out, I invite you to consider your own inner headquarters. Which emotions do you allow at the console, and which do you keep at a distance? What are your core memories, and how have they shaped your spiritual journey? Can you recognize the divine witness, the Riley within you, that observes all emotions without being defined by any of them? Remember that, like Riley, you contain multitudes. As the psalmist declares in Psalm 8:5, humans are made a little lower than God, crowned with glory and honor. If you found new insights through this exploration of Inside Out, please like this video, subscribe for more spiritual cinema insights, and share with others who might benefit from seeing this beloved film through a spiritual lens. Visit figalisticrestoration.com for more writings that bridge ancient wisdom with modern expression through the lens of popular culture. Which emotion is currently driving your headquarters? Share in the comments below.